Thank you very much for joining us. Today, it's so good to see such a large turnout. Earlier, we had a very stimulating keynote lecture and fire chat. And Yamazaki-san and Horiji-san, we really had a heated discussion. Now we'll move on to the panel discussion so that we can have a further in-depth discussion. You find this triangle: artist, publisher, and readers. That's one of the relationship, but we have Fukui sensei to talk about a platform, and others will talk about other aspects and what form it will take eventually. It's going to be an interesting conclusion. Now, we would like to have lead a lot of time for a discussion, but first, I would like to explain to you what we would like to do today, and I was discussing this with Hidaka-san. We really like to have Yamazaki-san with us because from various different angles, we should be discussing manga. So we have Okamoto Masashi Kinpachi san, and I discussed with him, and Kinpachi-san decided on the title. In English, it's Manga Direct Delivery. The artist, publisher, and lawyer, Kinpachi, came up with the name. And as Yamazaki-sensei said, either we should go back to 500 years ago, or are we repeating the history? The history usually repeats itself. But when it comes to manga, we know it's changing because the platform is a topic, technology is advanced, and I think Hosono-san will talk about this topic. The piracy is a concern. Fukui-san will discuss this. And then the possibilities of creatives as manga is going to face various challenges. And we will talk about archives, copies, the original drawings. Are there original drawings for digital works? What are we going to do? I always have to discuss this, but in the exhibition, how are we going to present the original drawings when it's prepared digitally? Well, we like to have a discussion of this nature. And let me briefly introduce these three panel members and why we are here. Actually, 5 years ago at the British Museum, as Yamazaki-san said, we had an exhibition, and it was the largest manga exhibition at British Museum, and at Sainsbury Gallery, right next to Rosette, the stone, we had the first exhibition as Japan. Manga was the first Japanese exhibition here, and of course, there was a heated discussion whether it's acceptable or not. And I think I caused a lot of inconveniences among Japanese publishing companies, but even in the end, it was a great success. I was there as a curator. My name is Uchida Hiromi, Matsuda Ryoko. Three of us had been the curator for this exhibition, the city exhibition manga. And I learned a lot. And Nakaguma Ichiro of Shogakukan, who is now retired, helped us tremendously. And an editor, he served as an editor role for a publishing house. Well, together we introduced this, but what was important was that it was a very stimulating experience for the British Museum, and it was the most popular exhibition at that time. That was the beginning for Tom Campbell, the head of the Young Museum, who saw this exhibition, has decided that they wanted the exhibition. And right now we are preparing for the Young's exhibition. But that is not going to be an cultural exhibition, but art is going to be the aspect that they're going to talk about. British Museum is a museum, but Young is an art museum. And so as an art, and this is related to what Yamazaki-san said earlier, but what is art? What is copy? This is still an area which is not clearly elucidated, and that's what we'd like to discuss in the panel later on. In San Francisco, 8 artists are going to be included in the exhibition. That's the plan. And against the background, Akatsuka Fujio and Ashita no Jo of Chiba Tetsuya are going to be included in the exhibition. There are various reasons why, and I shouldn't keep on speaking long, but one thing is that Ashita no Jo, everybody knows this, but it was not globally known because it was never translated into English. However, Kondansha is going to publish an English version as a 50th anniversary. Hosono-san will later talk about this, but in various different languages, if you could present these contents, these works will become more commonly known. Now, let me very briefly introduce to you the 8 artists. Takahashi Rumiko is, of course, the very well-known artist. She's been producing manga works for 50 years. Now, what she's working on right now, her manga is very interesting. There's no anime, just manga works. Illustration is exquisite. I want her to be included. And of course, Yamazaki Mari, Yamazaki Sensei, needs to be in the exhibition. So Yamazaki Sensei and Taniguchi Jiro Sensei, very closely related, is going to be adjacent to her work. So, and Araki Hirohiko Sensei of Shueisha will be there. It's not going to be a mixture like in the British Museum, but they will have their own space to create their own world respectively. So we'll have a more in-depth exhibition. And together with various publishing companies who would like to do the presentation, that's another challenge. But then, this is interesting. It comes with different the touches, and Yoshinaga Fumi, Tagame Gengoro, and Yamashita Kazumi, and of course, Oda Eiichiro. And lastly, this is the most interesting part, and this is Kinpachi's Shueisha Manga Heritage. As he will explain about this later on, this leads to a very interesting exhibition. And lastly, I would like to show you on the far right, you see Kubo Titus, the hanging scroll in the box. On the left, you find a Starbound blockchain link. As you can see in the symbol on the right, you find Jingojin's the praying card. So there's an old way of doing things and modern motions moving in tandem, and I think that's very interesting. And this is what I would like to talk about. Now, as a speaker, I would like to introduce each one of the panel members to you. We have Okamoto Kinpachi, Masashi Kinpachi Okamoto. Hello. I'm called Kinpachi because I have the golden hair, king iro hair. He works for Shueisha and he's a creative person for titles. He's been very creative, and he does something new every time, and I'm surprised that Shueisha really got him. He's really cool. Shueisha really is cool too. Now it has its own gallery and various artistic work as well as corporate important plans as to how to preserve the artwork. They cannot have original works anymore, but Kinpachi's been working on how to preserve the works, the drawings. Also, he tries very hard for the manga to be sustainable into the future. The person in the middle is a lawyer. We have Mr. Kensaku Fukui, Kensaku-san. Fukui, thank you. Last year, together with Fukui-san, we were at Kyoto for UNESCO's the Piracy Symposium, and that was a wonderful symposium. And thanks to Fukui-san, I cannot repeat what he does, but he will tell us about IP and piracy, digital platforms. Those have been topics in the society which will be growing interest in the future. Maybe that's not so much yet in Japan, but in foreign countries, in the United States, it's very important. Many American young people that I know do not know what's piracy and what's not. So what's going to be the piracy? We will discuss this. In English, last but not least, Hosono Shuhei-san is with us. He is with Shueisha. He's an editor, but not just an editor. He does the right work, really. He's a creative editor in a way, I should say. Now, Shonen Jump Plus is his work. This platform has many innovations included. In 9 different languages, the works are published, and simultaneously, the translations are made available. If you look at the apps, and you see different topics, and just looking at the apps, it will support the artist. He updates the contents every day. I'm surprised he found time to be here this afternoon, but these are the 3 speakers. And I want each one of them to speak first and then have a joint discussion.
I'm from Shueisha Shonen Jump Plus. My name is Hosono. Today I'd like to talk about manga digitalization progress and Shonen Jump Plus. Thank you very much. Before I talk, with Yamazaki-san, I was listening to Yamazaki-san and Horiuchi-san. It was very stimulating. I felt that maybe I need to straighten my collar, and it was very, very enjoyable listening to them. Today, there are lots of people who know a lot about manga. So rather than talk about the manga industry, I'd like to talk mainly about Jump Plus. So very quickly, to introduce myself, in the year 2000, I joined Shueisha, and I was assigned to monthly Shonen Jump, and then Jump Square, weekly Shonen Jump, and then Jump Plus for more than 20 years. I have been in the manga industry, in the field of manga. So the progress of digitalization, I have really felt that firsthand. And I'm sure you know this already, so I'll go very quickly. So before talking about Jump Plus, about the publishing industry, the current situation, to briefly go over this, in Japan, the publishing industry sales come to around 1.6 trillion yen. And as part of that, comics is about 700 billion yen. About 40%, a little more, is sales from comics. And as part of that, e-comics sales comes to 483 billion yen. So e-comics is already about 70% of all comics. So when I say e-comics, I'm talking about the single-volume tankobon. They've existed from before. The manga comics, so we call that tankobon, and the e-version. On Kindle, for example, there are the electronic bookstore type services that are offered. And then selling by episode, we call this wa-uri in Japanese. At Jump Plus, magazine type services like that, so sell episode by episode, or maybe rental. And like Piccoma, there are webtoons. They sell episodes. And this is not very large in number, but there are subscription services, read all you like, or subscriptions. So these are also included in e-comics. And for your reference, the North American manga market, and it doesn't tell you when, but this is for 2022. the North American manga market. It's worth about 2.1 billion yen, which is about 339 billion yen. $2.1 billion. It's not just the sales of Japanese manga, but also the American amekomi, American comics as well, are included. But I think maybe the Japanese comics have a larger share of the market. And changes in digital sales. I wanted to introduce this to you. And the line chart above shows you paper plus e-comics, the changes in the market. And looking at this, you can tell halfway through there's a dip. And if you expand that, this is what it looks like. In 2014, all of a sudden you see an increase. And it's not like comic sales suddenly recovered. What happened was, from 1214, e-comics joined the statistics. And the colors are a bit pale, but the green is the e-comics. That's the green. And the red is the manga comics, the tankobon single volumes. And the blue is the manga magazines. They are decreasing rapidly. And in their place, you see the e-comics increasing. Before 2014, the e-comics, it's not like they didn't exist, but they started appearing in the statistics from 2014. And at around the same time, we at Shueisha, we've been moving forward with digitalization of the Jump Group. In 2014, we started Jump Plus, where I work now. But from before that, in 2012, Jump Bookstore, an electronic bookstore type services started. This is when Kindle had not yet reached Japan, right before Kindle came to Japan. That's when we started Jump Bookstore. And we were able to confirm that there are readers of e-books. And in 2013, we started Jump Live. So this is sort of like an extra edition if this were a paper form. And after that, we started Jump Plus. And in 2019, we started Manga Plus by Shueisha. As Nicole-san was good enough to introduce earlier on, with the exception of Japan, South Korea, and China, in 9 languages we offer manga services. This is for outside Japan. We started 5 years ago in 2019. And in 2024, we started Jump Toon. This started actually just last week. The Jump Group is trying its hand out at webtoons. You vertically scroll the manga. We started these services last week. So this is Jump Plus. I'd like to introduce Jump Plus to you. Excuse me. So Jump Plus, a major characteristic is new works are updated every day. As was introduced earlier on, each month, about 5,000 to 6,000 pages of new works are updated. And every 2 weeks, I check about 2,000 pages. And today, too, this is the final day for doing the checks. But because we had this seminar today, I left it to my team members. I felt rather bad leaving them to it, but I've decided to come here. And number 2, you can read up to the most recent episode. Jump Plus, after you download the app, everything is free of charge the first time. And all the way to the most recent episode, you can read fully. And with the paper magazines, the weekly Shonen Jump is very popular, and people are subscribing to the e-version. You can do that through Jump Plus. And Jump Plus, Shueisha operates it. And you can use either the app or the browser. And the number of downloads, 27 million downloads, weekly active users, 7 million. That's the scale. And the purpose of Jump Plus is we want to create the next generation mega hits. In 2014, when we started, Weekly Shonen Jump itself, we wanted to overtake paper form Weekly Shonen Jump. And with that as our goal, we've been working hard. And to go into the details of the characteristics, we have the magazine functions. So this is like the paper magazine functions. Paper magazines have a new series and they publish newcomers' works. And we also have the single episodes. So Jump Plus, every year we have more than 300 such single works, standalone works. And through this we want to create hits. So a place for creating hits. That's what we think is the magazine function. And what's important is, like I said earlier on, after downloading the app, all episodes are free of charge the first time you read them. And by doing this, the reader, for example, regarding Spy Family and other popular works, they can read all the way up to the most recent episode free of charge. And the most recent episode is free of charge too. So there are apps that charge you for the most recent episode, where it's free of charge if you wait. But we decided not to do that. Everything is free of charge the first time. So we wanted to make things exciting, like the way a magazine is exciting. We wanted to create hits together. That's our goal. And thanks to everyone, we do have several hits. Today, over there, you can see the boards, Spy Family and Kaiju No. 8, Chainsaw Man. These have been hits. They've been turned into anime, and outside Japan, they're also very popular. And Yamazaki-san's Terumae Romae, thank you for having your series with us. And Jump Plus, working at Jump Plus, what impact or effect does digitalization have on manga? To talk about that a little bit, broadly speaking, there are 2 points. One is you are freed from the restrictions of paper, and the number of pages is limitless. If it's paper, of course, this time we ask the artist to fill in 31 pages, and they tell us, I want to draw 45 pages. But then in paper form, we have to tell them, sorry, we cannot carry 45 pages. But with Jump Plus, it doesn't matter how many pages they draw. And until we get the works, we don't know how many pages it's going to be. And we start checking, we know how many pages. And the frequency is free as well. With a magazine, the frequency of updates needs to be decided, otherwise we cannot publish. Or when an artist decides not to give us a work, we have to have someone on standby, but we don't need to worry about that. And the final bullet point, the number of trials is increased. So regarding newcomers, trials, standalone works, we have 300 a year. We can do that freely. And by doing this, it's easier to create hits. And the second point, utilizing digital technologies. So it's an app. So within the app, we can make recommendations, make suggestions to accelerate the popularity of works. And it's not in the Jump Plus app, but using AI, we can offer creative support. There's Komikopa. Artists, when they have problems creating, they can consult using these apps. So there are lots of very gorgeous stories about digitalization, but however, the manga production site, like you see here on this slide, it's quite low-key, it's quite meticulous. It's a repetition of this. The slide shows you Bachman. It's a work about manga artists. And together with the artist, the editor is holding a briefing. So it's not that exciting. And we have an accumulation of this, and even after digitalization, this has not changed. And the characteristics of manga, after digitalizing, we can tell better what the characteristics of manga are. So manga are produced by a small number of people, meticulously, and by doing it this way, this leads to diversity. Because, as you can see below, it's completely opposite from marketing. If you work as a group, it's like you have to go after hit, you have to be a hit. What's popular now? You have to think about that as you draw your manga, which means that you tend to get something that's pretty much run-of-the-mill, same as everyone else. But manga, through the creativity of individuals, you can change the world. It has the power to do that, and you can try your hand at that. Therefore, even after digitizing, including Jump Plus, the Jump Group's manga creation remains unchanged. So like the analog era, we're doing it very meticulously. So to summarize, so we're utilizing the good points of digitalization and the good points of analog as well. We're continuing at that so that with both digital and analog, we're aiming for hits. That's the current situation regarding Jump Plus. Sorry to have gone so quickly. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Well, it's Fukui. And why is a lawyer here in this panel? You may be wondering. But I'm assuming that the topic of piracy is the reason why I'm here. Maybe that's what I should start with. The manga's been very popular overseas, and that popularity has already been discussed. But at the same time, what is rapidly growing is the topic of online piracy, and it's not limited to manga works, to many others. And do I have to operate my own slide? Right here. The slide shows the structure of online manga piracy very roughly. And let me go through this very quickly. What you find in red is the operator of the piracy site. Not so many in Japan. And Vietnam is where it's been very active. And the overseas countries where it's very difficult to charge with criminal law, they have these operators, and this can be run by individuals. And on several net service being used, and they can obtain the domain anonymously. They use services that do not require you to disclose your own legitimate name. And it's not just for piracy. Most of the criminal works on the internet's being done in this manner. For example, what it says number one, it's domain name. access.com is the domain name, which is an address on the internet, and you have to register it. Now, there are registrars who do not require you to disclose your identity, and they will just let you engage in piracy work for monetary purposes. They know what they are willing engage in criminal activities, but that's how the piracy operators can register their domain name. And number two, or what is in the middle, rather, the illustration, is the hosting service. And this is a server where the piracy work is structured. And there is a request for deletion because of piracy work. Many operators just ignore the request to delete, and oftentimes it's in foreign countries, the third countries. And but the servers have limited capacity, and they cannot deal with tens of millions of access. So they go for CDN, contents delivery networks, which augments which works as a relay server, and some of them know that they're engaged in criminal activity. Some of them may be measured, and they ignore the request to delete because it's a piracy work. That's the green part. Also, the advertisement agency is important because oftentimes piracy operators get income from advertisement. Once they know, in Japan, once they know it's piracy work, the advertisers will not give advertisement, but overseas, for the monetary purpose, they do run they do run their advertisement knowing it's a piracy work for monetary purpose. Therefore, the works can be done anonymously with a small startup money, And by doing so, they can get a large number of access. You know Manga Mura, the word? The other day, the operator, Mail, had to pay 1.7 billion for a download, and that leads to that was equivalent to 100 million access per month. If you're on a train, all the youngsters are reading the piracy works on Manga Mura. And then there's been an increase in the number of piracy access. At the worst point, 400 million access per month just for Japanese original language manga existed. And then, as a result of various countermeasures, the numbers declined. Japan top 10 monthly, the number of visits is 100 million. TV more, but visits, it's been contained down to 100 million, and that's okay. But then another aspect has grown, which is the English translated version of piracy work. From the North America, the access is most frequent, and for top 10 sites, it's the access has increased to 530 million, and in Asia as well, there's piracy for other languages, and taking countermeasures for that is even more difficult. Everything together, monthly, 1 billion plus is the number of access for piracy work, and including how much time people spend for compared to TikTok. The access for manga piracy is longer. People spend more time than TikTok together, which means we are now in the worst situation in the market right now. In the whole history, the record worst time. The countermeasures are being developed, but they're not working because they go for domain hopping. They change their domain name while the authorities are taking measures to counter against this. So it's not just manga, but for piracy, operators as a whole, it's spreading for the entire piracy business. In addition, various platforms are offering subscription services, and that's wonderful. But in terms of price, the payment, it's really breaking down the level, and much of the contents are becoming free of charge. Information is becoming free of charge, in other words. Well, right now, manga sales is increasing, so things may work out. But if measures are not successful to fight against piracy in the future, the manga sales or the work sales might decline in the future, so that content service may not be viable in the future. So publishers and manga artists are trying very hard to deal with this. Internet Governance Forum was held last year, and with Nicole and Hagiomoto, we attended this forum, and there were booths, exhibitions, and panel discussion. Was one of the happiest time I had in life, because I'm Hagiomoto's big fan since I was 6 years old. But keeping that aside, we had a topic discussion, and we said that it's important that international matter stakeholders collaborate, because otherwise domestic measures, single country measures are not sufficient. Also, just beating piracy is not enough. So the legitimate version must be offered in a timely manner at the least reasonable price, exactly what Shonen Plus is doing. But it's the two sides of the sword, so you have to do both. Now, when it comes to distribution of legitimate version, contract is very important, as Yamazaki-san said. So let me very briefly talk about contracts. It's not just publishing overseas, because Japan is popular, offering manga as an original product and cinematize the product by Hollywood. We see various different types of international contracts of that matter. But when the contract is global or international, not, things do not necessarily always work successfully because, as was mentioned, most of the time the contract are very long, and oftentimes the templates are already there and prepared. And in the past, the Japanese companies or Japanese parties did not or could not negotiate those contracts and simply accepted their terms. And what happened was like copyright was all was given by a whole to the other party with no rights left. There could be various reasons, but they have to. The platforms are and the hardwood measures as well. They have to deal with many parties, and they say, at least on the surface, they say the contracts are not negotiable, and the Japanese parties simply believe. Actually, as Yamazaki-san said, you have to negotiate. The negotiation is possible, but that's not been done by Japanese parties. And what the other party said, that they have to follow their in-house rules and templates and policies, and without reading or negotiating, the Japanese party simply accepted. Oftentimes, the languages, the words are very complicated and difficult to read because they're too technical. Without reading, many Japanese parties did sign contracts, and it's changing. For example, Shueisha has been fighting against those unfair contracts, and but still there are many unacceptable contracts being signed. And this relates to the contracts in Japan. You have to consider return and control very important because right holders must be able to receive legitimate compensation, adequate compensation. Also, changes or adaptation of the works must be controlled. Maybe some adaptations are necessary for good works, but they may go out of control, and that must be well controlled. Future secondary use, you have to make sure the possibility is ensured. Those are the topics that are important in contracts. Now, in the end, I would like to explain to you one case, example. Right at this moment, Japanese right holders may be signing a contract like this, which is a very typical nature, and this is a type of contract for cinematization. The producers, the other party, can, through the exclusive license in perpetuity and throughout the universe in any language, or right title and interest in producing and exploiting one or more audiovisual works. And this is a very common practice. But this means that the copyright is passed on in its entirety. There could be various negotiations taking place. However, the know-how for negotiation will have to be learned and acquired by the negotiation party, and mangaka, manga artists, and publishing companies will have to work together to discuss and negotiate these contract, and return and control conditions will have to be incorporated into the contracts in a satisfactory manner for all parties. I'm used up by time, and Kinpachi-san will talk about archive. That's another very interesting topic I would have liked to talk, but let me close my talk.
So at Shueisha, we have the Shueisha Manga-Art Heritage. In 2021, in March, we started this project. What is this? Shueisha, for the first time, we have a cross-border EC from Japan. Manga art prints are being sold to the world. That's what this business is. In 2021, in March, that was when COVID was gradually getting worse. And the manga art prints, we sell them, but the real exhibitions, we did without the real exhibitions. We introduced them only over the web and sold them throughout the world. And about 3 years have passed. What we've done so far, I have turned this into a movie. Let's take a look. Thank you. So that was very full. There was a lot in the video. Maybe it was difficult to tell. One piece. So it used letterpress print to print one piece. Or we got Mino to make some handmade washi paper, and we did collotype print. That's only done in Kyoto, in Japan. We use those technologies to have them do the printing there. Or I'll go into this in detail later, in 2021 in December. Actually, in Japan, gravure printing ended. And there are gravure idols. So gravure printing is the source of that expression. But in the world of printing, gravure printing was gradually decreasing. And Japan had it until the end, but that ended in December. And using this gravure printing press, together with Tana Ami-san, we did a work for Akatsuka Fujio. And for the first time, so what was new? What were we aiming for? Manga, these contents, because manga exist, new technologies and new printing technologies, a variety of printing technologies can be connected so that something new can be created and offered. That's what we're doing. You can see top left, printing technology, letterpress print. In Japanese, that's kappan insatsu. And then there's collotype print. So there's only one company in Kyoto that can do the collotype print. And then there's gravure printing, that's already gone. And the most recent technology is archival inkjet printing. These kind of technologies and digital technology. Phase one is using the best cameras, digital cameras, and high resolution, taking pictures of the original prints. And regarding the works that are printed, NFT blockchain certificates are linked. So by linking these, mainly, in the center there's the manga. So the old and the new are brought together to do something new. And we think that's interesting. And the source of this, the basic structure of this is, at Shueisha, we've called this CDA, Comics Digital Archives. We run this digital archive. We started it at quite an early stage in the year 2007. And the year 2007 is when the iPhone did not yet exist. And as Hosono-san said earlier on, Kindle arrived in Japan in 2014, I think. Was it 2012? So digital things have become really convenient. You may think they've existed forever, but actually they don't have that long a history. And before 2010, as Hosono-san probably knows, back then, you would have paper and then add the phototype setting, and then we created the printing presses, and we switched over around the year 2010. We switched to digital, and Shueisha, after that, set up its manga factory, and using this, the CDA data, we created data for distribution. Or, as we heard, for Jump, we created the data. We created this platform. And as Hosono-san was saying earlier on, manga has a lot of mass. With Shueisha alone, every year, we had about 800 new comics, standalone single volume, for Shueisha alone. So there are lots of digital comics, a lot of publishers, if you include all of them, probably. Maybe there's a new manga every second being born just only in Japan. And when I was involved in CDA, the printing, or I was with the printing area, and I came into contact with the manga original drawings and the data. And the original drawings I was looking at, the quality was amazing. So the covers of manga magazines, these are paintings that are really, really tiny, but the lace on the clothing was written in fine detail a lot of times. So I thought we should offer it to the world at some point in time. So manga and art, we tried to link the two and think about it. And this was a foot in the door for doing it. But we thought we have to do this more properly. And Nicole-san had the manga exhibition at the British Museum. And they were auctioned off at very high prices. We started to see that happening. However, the manga original drawings, are they art or not? So it's quite complicated. Let me give you an example. This is Vermeer. Oil paintings, Western paintings. As Yamazaki-san said earlier on, so they are going to last. So people are aware of this when they paint them. That's how they are produced. But manga. So we talked about paper earlier on, but they're very fragile. For example, this is from the Rose of Versailles. It's from the 1970s. That's when the manga was depicted. But already, it's starting to fall apart. You can see that from the backside of the paper, there are smudges appearing, or stains appearing, or the edge of the paper is starting to degrade. This is already happening. And manga original drawings, since the 1980s, they've been using certain types of ink, so they're very weak against light. The more you look at them, the more the color disappears. And they're not made for exhibiting and appreciating. So oil paintings gradually degrade. That's the blue line. But the manga, you can see on the right, they degrade really fast. As art, how should manga be treated? How should we enjoy manga? That's something we need to think about. And we, at the beginning, this is one of the works we released at the beginning. And over there you can see it's in a frame. It's from one piece. And we called it the Real Color Collection. It's archival inkjet print on paper. It uses cotton 100% paper. And it's not the size of the original, it's expanded in size. That's how we started this series. And as an edition print, all over the world, we only released 20. And we engraved this in blockchain and sold it. That's the kind of thing we've started. And together with this, the Rose of Versailles as well, we did that as well. And we started on the web. And we were unable to hold real exhibitions in the real world, but we were able to hold web exhibitions in Paris, the scenes from Paris, and a violin performance, and the Rose of Versailles. We combined all of them to create the video. And it's not just the manga, but music as well. We managed to combine them so that we were able to introduce this as culture. That was what we tried doing. Next, the press. So this is letterpress print. It's monochrome, black and white. We started doing that too. And manga. It looks more gorgeous if it's colored, but the mainstream is black and white. And as a work, we thought we should try to retain this. And the manga unique expressions, the printing press, it's very basic kind of printing. Maybe it's not that high quality. It's letterpress printing, and they use recycled paper. And you can read it even if you print large mass volume. That's the kind of expression that developed. So using letterpress print, as much as possible, we wanted to make it high quality. We tried to make it as high quality as possible. That's what this series is. And this shows you our doing the printing. And actually, the letterpress printing in the 1970s, in Tokyo, in the Shitamachi, you could still see them around. But they were replaced by the offset printing. And when we looked for them in Nagano at a factory, this is the only place that had this printer. In the 70s, we asked the artisans, the craftsmen, to come back and ask them to do the printing for us. And the works too, these kinds of printers and the technologies of the craftsmen, including all of this, we wanted to hand it on to the next generation. And together with that, the frames for exhibiting, we wanted to have proper frames. This is from bleach, and it's framed. And the frame is made with a Wajima Nuri lacquerware. So we got Wajima artisans to make us pitch black frames. So this is all lacquer, and the back side is lacquer as well. We asked them to create these frames for us. And after the frame was completed, there was the earthquake, the major earthquake that hit Wajima. And we actually planned to produce on order, but we were unable to produce any more. So these 12 works are really, really valuable. And manga are at the center. That's why we were able to do this. We were able to link this with traditional arts and crafts. And we want to continue to do this kind of thing. And in a good sense of the word, it's helping the reconstruction and recovery at Wajima after the earthquake. And at the beginning, Nicole-san talked about the paper making and the bleach work. How many minutes do I have left? I do? Okay, thank you. In Mino, we asked them to make washi paper, and then we added collotype printing. And this is made from mulberry, and you remove the impurities and then smash it manually and make the paper. And one craftsman was doing this in Mino. She can only make 60 sheets a month. Using things like this, we have been making prints. And this shows you the collotype print that can only be done in Kyoto. And right after this technology was invented, the printing technologies began. And with the ordinary printing, this uses nets, but this is all done using graduation. It uses gelatine to do the printing. It's a very rare kind of technique. And with Bleach's new works, we're using the old originals. This is the kind of thing we're doing. So in this way, it's like we're going back in time. And before becoming phototype setting, how was manga made? We're going back there and turn this into a work. This is from One Piece. We called it Regenesis. And this is actually, before the phototype setting, there was only the zinc plate and the printing type. And the balloons were they all used saws, tiny saws like this, to remove the parts where the lines go. And I'd heard about this before, but the real thing didn't exist anymore. And somehow, we managed to reproduce this once again. We found places that created the zinc plates, and this is what we ended up with. And not only what was completed, but the manga culture, the source technologies, we want to try to hand those on as well. We think that's important. So we produced this and we sold it. And NFT blockchain, it's linked with that as well, including reselling. So who has it been sold to? Who used to own this? This is all recorded. It's very interesting, isn't it? And Tanaami Keiichi multiplied by Akatsuka Fujio. This is the last gravure print in 2021 in December. This is the work we came up with. So that was too short. I'm sure you didn't understand. Regarding the colors, so I'm sure Yamazaki-san understands, but with colors, if you turn them into lithographs or something else, what's used commercially, gradually the demand decreased, and then it tried to steer direction towards art. That's happened a lot. But with gravure printing presses, they're really, really large. And they can be 800 meters in length. No, sorry, 80 meters in length. It wouldn't be 800. And it's like the size of a 3-story building. And inside, the rolls of paper are 800 meters long. That's how large they are. So once they stop, you can never start them up again. Therefore, we wanted to create art prints. And with Tanaami-san, we created works. And this is Tanaami Keiichi with Akatsuka Fujio. These are the works in New York at the art fair, Art on Paper. We offered works there, and Nicole-san was good enough to come and helped us out and gave us her cooperation. And it was very, very popular. And it just so happens, the New York Public Library, the person from the library said it was wonderful, and at the New York Public Library, it's now a part of the library collection. So it's interesting that these kinds of things happen. And at the art fair, actually Tanaami-san couldn't stop. This looks like a tent. It's a tea ceremony room. And in the tea ceremony room, we started to hold tea ceremonies in a variety of locations. And I'll try to go quickly, but actually, the art market, globally, it's very large, but in Japan, it's really small. This shows you the global artworks market. That's what this pie chart is. The US, China, this is the balance, and Japan is in others. So Japan is 1%, if that. And the Japanese art market, in total, it's only worth about 359 billion yen. Earlier on, Hosono-san was talking about 359 billion. In Japan, in digital comics, this is less than the sales of digital comics. Regarding the art market, it's only 258 billion yen. So Japan's digital comics, the sales, so at the showing Hosono-san again, it's about 500 billion yen, and Japan's art market is really, really small. And looking at this in detail, Japanese paintings is the largest. It has the largest share. So we are a publisher, and what we can do with manga, in the Japanese market, maybe we should not try to compete for market share. We realized this from the beginning. In Japan, so manga is becoming a larger presence. So manga, this art. So we wanted to have a context other than fine art. And we thought that might be interesting. I'm sorry to have gone on for so long. Thank you very much.
Kinpachi, thank you very much. It was these are all three very stimulating talk, and we can have a very good discussion. But the art market in Japan is really small. And we talked about fine arts of Japan, but the term bijutsu, it must have something to do with it, because bijutsu is the new word coined in the beginning of Meiji era, 1872. In Edo era, there's no word as bijutsu in existence. Then what is bijutsu? That was the time before art museum existed. What is bijutsu? People didn't know that. And the definition we have for bijutsu has been the discussion after Meiji era. Exactly as Yamazaki-san said, if you think about it, manga and all the activities and the contract, it may be equivalent to Renaissance era 500 years ago. Maybe it's repeating itself, and the same is happening in Japan. Personally, my research had been in ceramics, and at the Harvard, I published the thesis for doctorship. ceramics is not really the fine arts. And so from that time on, I had been rather upset because this is the research for my life and it's not fine arts, whether it's ceramics or manga. They're not called fine arts, but they both have their roles to play. The fine arts, crafts, and industries, they're all objects that are being produced. And if you think about this, you have to start by thinking what ceramics is. So before the term bijutsu, in Japan, together with Tsuji Nobuo, we held an exhibition called Kazari, ornament. We thought it was an ornament, but it could be thought in various different ways. And it's really a very deep topic. What is the role of curators? In Japan, the Dobushu Ashikaga era, the curators did function in Japan as well. And it's a very important role because the ornaments, the illustration, the rooms with the decoration, the ambience, you have to make people feel the works in its entirety, and you really have to think about this. And I think what Kinpachi-san is doing is exactly right, including music, giving you experiences. That's very good. And one thing that I noted what Kinpachi said was that was for enjoying the works. Enjoying works, he said oil painting. But if you preserve, would it be for appreciation rather than just enjoying appreciation? I had been at the British Museum, but for appreciation, drawings or Michelangelo's drawings or Leonardo's drawing are there for arts appreciation. So is it a fine art object? Is it there for appreciation? It's a very subtle topic. What do you think? Kansho or appreciation, maybe that's not the proper term that I used, because Japanese manga, when it is exhibited in art museum with the gentle light, it may be considered acceptable, but in reality, the colors would fade with the light. Therefore, the art manga works are not suited at all for art exhibitions. There's been researches going on, and people are paying attention to how to preserve those original works. But the more people watch it, the more the color would fade. That's an issue. Another topic, the manga artists, when they illustrate or draw, they do not expect those original works to be exposed to the public at a later time because they will be put in print, there will be letters added. Those are the prerequisites for any of the manga work. Therefore, exhibiting the drawing as it is may not be appropriate.
And I think it's linked to what we said earlier on. Since 2010, Japanese manga, pretty much, they do not use phototype setting. But in everyone's head, the original works, on top of the handwritten drawings, they think about adding on phototype setting on top of the drawings. That's what people think it is. However, ever since 2010, since then, it's just for exhibition. We paste on the phototype setting on top for the exhibition. So what does it mean to be an original work? Creating the best possible thing for printing, focusing on printing. As a publisher, as manga art, trying to propose that, we think is the best thing to do. That's how we're moving forward. Thank you. I think your answer is spot on. But one thing, so the ukiyo-e block prints, aren't they the same? The ukiyo-e, to start out with, I think they were for viewing and appreciating at home or individually. But At a minimum, the same in Japan. There are a lot in museums, and at the British Museum, we have a big ukiyo-e collection. And Tim Clark, the curator, was saying, he explained to me beforehand, so one is perfect, so he cannot put it on show. So at the museums, stored at the museums, that's a very important role. So that's the history of culture. To understand the culture from a variety of perspectives, we need to think about this. And it just so happens, this is interesting, so maybe we can have Yamazaki-san's input, please, after listening to all of this as an artist. May I ask you? Thank you. So from the perspective of a manga artist, I'd like to say one thing. Like you said earlier on, being put on display, that's not what we have in mind when we draw up manga. So the Yamazaki Mari exhibition is being done in Aichi Prefecture, and the curator there looked at one of the scripts that I'd written, and on the other side, on the back side, the right-hand side of the face was drawn from the left. And can I put this on exhibition? I said, please don't do it. When I look at this, I was just doing this to make sure that it was accurate. It's not for putting on show. But I thought, so for people who want to put things on show at an exhibition, it's interesting to a person like that. So that's not what a manga artist would think. But it is for putting on show. So Nicole, maybe next year at the San Francisco Museum, if you want to put it on show, you want to do it as art. So regarding this discrepancy, mismatch, what do we do? How do we fill that gap? I was thinking about that as I was listening. As heritage art, being treated as heritage art makes me feel quite reassured. That's very encouraging. But what we don't want to show, maybe you can leave us alone. So this is kind of like a momentary, fleeting piece of art, something that disappears after just a moment. Maybe that's what this is. Listening, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you. Not to go back a little bit, Hosono-san and Fukui-san, I wanted to ask you, digitalization or digital platforms. I want to ask you a variety of questions, but the original. What is the original? Or what about conservation? Or saving? I mean, there are a lot on the platform. Going forward, something new is constantly being added. And in Jump Plus, the works you were offering before, what happens to the older works? Do you archive them? So digitally, you cannot archive them forever. Little by little, they will degrade. The digital data should degrade little by little. Well, regarding Jump Plus, we're celebrating 10 years since we started, and ever since we started, all of the data is still archived. That's amazing. You still have it. So we did not think of erasing any of it. Therefore, in the past, regarding all of the works that were uploaded, we have them all.
When it comes to the deterioration of the quality, the digital data do not deteriorate, and we may lose data, but it will not deteriorate. That's not what we expect. But of course, there needs to be servers to store and keep. It will have to be really large. Now, that could be an issue. Well, it's rather than the deterioration of quality, there could be various challenges, like for 10 years, 20 years, it may be good. Now, the British Museum, there's been a challenge. What was preserved before is no longer used. It's not included, or it cannot be entered. Floppy disk, the technology's changed, right? In that sense, we have the cloud, which releases us, liberates us from those restrictions. And storing the information on the cloud, that leads to another issue, that is the relationship with the cloud operator. But in principle, deterioration of hardware, not being able to read information of the data, that's not what happened. So if you keep that information on cloud, do you think cloud will be safe forever? Or could anybody who, for cloud criminals or whoever, whatever, may hack and take information, or someone who's not authorized may compromise the information? Well, the data on the cloud, there could be security issues, and there was a case where something on the Google Cloud all disappeared because of a mistake. But for us, what is more scary is the platform ethical policy may change, and as a result, the new policy may be applied to our product, and it may be banned or deleted. That's a concern. Fukui-san, you talked about various contract issues, which was some shocking information for us. If you sign a contract, in English, it was mentioned universe, which led to a very scary outcome. What should we do in the future? Even before that, I would like to talk about archive. Yes, that's an important topic. I've been a director of Digital Archiving Society. I've been active in this field. Now, in Japan, from the preservation of the movies from before the Second World War, the preservation rate is only 10%. Out of 10 wonderful art cinema works before the war, less than one remains because of the war damages and GHQ. Also, TV programs prior to 1980s, they're mostly gone because they had to reuse the same tapes again and again. We don't have them remaining. In other words, any type of works, unless we try to preserve, they will disappear into the history, the darkness of history. And for manga works, we need to conserve the original works. And of course, because of the inheritance tax issues, people tend to dispose those precious works. And intention is not just we want to leave the images, but it leads to the conditions for the use of such works for secondary purposes. Deterioration of the quality is another thing. It could move very quickly, but as Kinpachi-san gave us some wonderful examples earlier, there could lead to new businesses or the source of new development or education as well. This could be used for educational purposes if technology remains. So archiving could could become seeds for future developments. However, people out in the field are having very difficult time because not just digital work, any archive, teaching education of archive specialists is not really advancing in Japan.
And on Monday, the LDP's Intellectual Property Committee, it sounds rather stuffy, but to the Cabinet, Media Artists National Center, let's build this. We need an archive facility. They made a proposal to the government, and using the power of digital to move this forward, a digital archive promotion law. Please come up with a law. They made this proposal. So this kind of thing. We hope you can pay attention to this, and we want to move this forward. That's one thing. And another thing is, earlier on, about the contracts. Contract-wise, they're quite strong, and like Hosono-san said, they're being erased by the platform. What's called Apple censorship. It's kind of related to that. The platforms are very strong. All over the world, the information, they have power, they have riches. The small number of big techs are starting to get all of this. And the distribution channels are monopolized by them. That's why. For example, to the creators, they are not getting appropriate remuneration. And all over the world, this is happening. This is being pointed out. But that's not all. The producers, the curators, these people are now maybe facing a crisis. And they're not getting enough income, like the publishers, the producers. They need to get enough income returned to them, otherwise their function may be lost in society. The platforms, so-called monopoly, that threat exists towards contents at times. So negotiating the contract isn't just profits or losses. The appropriate power balance between the creator of the contents and the platform that distributes the contents. To maintain that appropriate balance, it's important. This is very important. And Hosono-san, what do you think? Yes. Jump Plus, the web version, exists because of what you just said. With the app alone, we could have done it. And there are such manga apps that already exist. However, if the apps are suddenly banned, if because of the platform's policy, we're suddenly told you're NG, we need to have a place where we can evacuate. That's why we have that as well. And I still recall, I think it was in 2017, suddenly, one morning, from the US, a call came in, and I was wondering what it was. I picked up the phone, and it was Apple from the US headquarters. And they said a certain work, it violated their ethical policy, and we had to delete it. Otherwise, they would ban our app. That's what Apple said to us. So every time I get a call from overseas, I break out in a cold sweat. But Apple headquarters in the US and in Japan, the branch office, we talked to both and won their understanding. And the past 5 or 6 years, behind the scenes, we have been communicating with the platforms. That's really scary. Please use the microphone. Yes, that must have been very scary. Probably the contract and the negotiation in relation to this in Japan, probably the digital comic market is very large. Plus, Apple and Amazon, before they started, we had created the market already. And Jump Bookstore started quite early. Therefore, Kindle, I mean, I am quoting specific names here, but overseas platformers like this, when they came to negotiate, we were able to say, with those conditions, we cannot agree. We were able to say that because we existed before they did. And I hear that none of the big players said yes. So, coming to the table for the negotiations at the beginning, I understand that that was the big first step. Regarding negotiations, that's very important. We often hear about, at Harvard, in lessons for negotiations, they talk about the best alternative to the negotiated agreement. So whatever the negotiation, having an alternative is very important. And regarding this alternative, the conditions, if they are worse, then I will not agree. It becomes easier to negotiate. So you should not be without alternatives. Otherwise, you will be negotiating from a weak position. And in Japan, regarding certain negotiations, we are like geniuses. We're wonderful at those kinds of negotiations. But regarding others, regarding the Western-type negotiations, Japan is not very good. What are we doing before the negotiations? We tell other people what we're going to do.
So you lose all of the choices and begin negotiation. That's not a good negotiation. That's not how you negotiate. You must keep multiple options. And but in Japanese comic industry, you had alternative plan to begin with. That was good, and I feel relieved. Thank you very much. Well, these are all very stimulating topics. But I think we should have more focused discussion. Hosono-san, your Jump Plus, let me ask you. And I was watching this earlier. What's interesting is that you have that in 9 different languages. Looking at the number of stories, seems like English is the main language, 340 something, then Spingo, 110 plus, and French, or rather Spanish word. English 340, Spanish 110, followed by French. Can you talk more about this? Well, Manga Plus is the foreign service, and we have the service offered to all countries around the world except for Japan, Korea, and China. English was the first to start, followed by Spain, and then that's the order that we have translated, because as Fukui sensei said earlier, the overseas version, the piracy, is most frequent in Spain following English, because so we just did not want to rival piracy. Rather, we wanted to find business opportunities because we thought there are many Spanish readers of manga. That's why we decided to go for Spanish version. And actually, I talked to a French editor about this, and they said, "Why no French translation? Because French love manga." Right, that's why we added a French translation to our manga. Well, that's very interesting because there are many piracies where they wanted to add Spanish language because they thought it was a business opportunities for the future. Indeed, as Fukui-san said earlier, talked about alternative and Batnam. That's one very good example of coming up with alternative plan. Well, piracy is common in Asian countries as well, in Asian languages. Indonesia, Thai, Vietnam, they love Japanese manga, and we are grateful for that situation. But at the same time, they have many piracy sites. However, as you said, this is an opportunity. Also, there are needs that we can pick up. Right, Manga Plus, the user is large in number in Indonesia and Thai. And that is why we have included these 2 languages. Vietnamese is also available. Last year, together with Fukui-san, we attended this wonderful symposium with Hagiomoto as well. And after the symposium, we heard various reactions. And the people who attended this meeting, there are many Brazilians attending this meeting, and they speak Portuguese. And I thought it was interesting because those Brazilians said that they cannot read manga in Portuguese officially. That is why they have to resort to piracies. What do you think? You're right. We are trying very hard. The Japanese publishers are trying very hard to offer their manga in affordable prices in their respective languages. And the Jump Plus is one best example. However, there are limitations due to prices and timing and the breadth of the title, the scope of the title. They know a lot and they want to read more and more. But there are needs that need to pick up. And that's what the publishing company people who attended this forum felt very strongly. And what Brazilian youngsters wanted was resonate with us.
Yes, but piracy still should not be condoned. But there are people who are paying properly, and they should not be the losers. So we do need to make sure that the official version is distributed, and what's energy is energy. We have to say that. So we heard a lot, and there's a lot more we want to talk about. We don't have much time left, but there are 2 things I'd like to talk about. May I continue? How many more minutes do we have? Yes, I hate to interrupt the conversation, But let's try to go into the final discussions, if that's all right. Okay. So finally, I think it's related to everyone here regarding the future. Art and manga is manga art. For me, this is something very important. Going forward, I think manga is culture, but what's the definition of art? There are a lot of things we have to think about. Going forward, for example, when we think about storage or the original prints in the future, if things become digital, what happens to the paper form original works? Regarding this, if you could have a comment from each of you, please? Yes? Regarding saving or archiving the original, the manga original works, probably from around the 2010, they are not increasing because, like Yamazaki-san was saying, everyone has switched to digital. And they do draw the lines in analog, but pretty much 90%, 95% is done digitally. And at Jump Plus 2, people who give us analog scripts, right now no one does that. And it's becoming quite limited. But that's why they are so precious. Going forward, how do we conserve them? That becomes an important issue, and it is like limited. So I think maybe we can think about it, and we do want to try to archive them properly. They are finite. Right now, I have started to write digitally, and Hosono-san was talking about marketing. It's the completely opposite of marketing. So individual creativeness will change the world. And that resonated, and I wanted to touch on that again. In one respect, being at the other extreme is AI. And at least the current AI. As a tool, it's very convenient. But AI, can it create new manga? We discuss that a lot. There are efforts to try to do that. But currently, it's a weak AI. It's only good at copying. But if a strong AI were to be developed, then the discussion may change. But while it's still a weak AI, it can only learn from the past. Which means this is a marketing kind of concept. Because this was popular in the past, let's create something similar. But that's just like downsizing and reproducing. So it's going to be popular momentarily, but it's not genius. It's not something really silly. It's not like a delusion. Those kinds of things may decrease. When you think about AI and being creative, I think we should keep that in mind too. That's what I was thinking of when I was listening. That's all. Kinpachi-san? Is manga art? It's difficult to reach a conclusion. But when we say art, it's not just the fine arts, it could be the technologies. I think there's art in a broader sense of the word. And manga, in a broader sense of the word, needs to be handed down to future generations. I'm sure no one will say no to that. And when we do that, actually, when we think it's important, it may already be gone. A lot of it is already gone. And I was in charge of digitalization, and back then I did not think it was important. Aoyaki is something I did not think was important. Aoyaki is film. When we get it, we see a large number of aoyaki, and we used to throw away such a lot of aoyaki. So we create lots and lots for each page. But right now, nothing remains. We threw all of it away. And in the year 20-something, 2 or 3 years ago, when I noticed I should have taken action, but about 3 years ago, there was a company. There were no companies that could create aoyaki anymore. And it can never be recreated. So, reflecting on that, maybe we should try to reproduce it. That's the blueprints. The aoyaki is the blueprints. So we've been looking for this. This is sort of like to feel less guilty. So we need to make sure that we can conserve the whole, the contents of the works, of course, but how the work was produced. We need to make sure we conserve that as well and archive that as well. I think we should think about that as well.
Next, the phototype setting. We have a project to preserve it, and Friday this week we are going to take the image of phototype setting in use. for archiving purpose. Thank you. It was very stimulating, and we were able to hear Yamazaki-sensei's opinion as well. Do we have time for Q&A? No, not today. We ran out of time. We have to close the session. You have to wrap up. Well, in the end, I would like to thank you very much, especially the 3 panel members, Yamazaki-sensei, Horuchu-san, and everybody else who are here. Thank you very much for joining us despite today being such a fine day, beautiful day.